So in the last video, we addressed the training and support that we're going to provide to our franchisees. Now we're going to get into the perhaps question you'd be really interested in, which is the costs, obviously really important. So let me just tee up the section on costs with a couple of thoughts. First of all, our overall cost and franchise fee, we've worked pretty hard to keep those costs as low and as reasonable, and I think they compare very favorably. Our sort of ethos or philosophy behind this is we want to obviously make sure that our franchisees are invested and make sure we're fairly compensated for the time that we take to train you, and also charge a fair price for the exclusive rights to your territory of 500 licenses. But ultimately, we would prefer to make our money from royalties, because ultimately, if we're getting royalties, you're paying it for money. If you're making money, then we're making money only when you're making money. So that seems fairer to us. So certainly our idea has been to keep that cost down. The other thing I would say is that there's an obvious comparison to a big competitor of ours. And when I look at their estimation about the additional costs that are going to be suffered or paid in addition to what's paid to us, our estimates are a lot higher, and I believe our estimates are more reasonable. So I would just urge you to compare like with like and make sure that you're sort of thinking if those are correctly dealt with. And then finally, I'm going to go over the most important elements of the cost, but if you would like to know all of the different pieces, the best place to look would be the franchise disclosure document in items 5, 6, and 7, handles all of this, but also the table of estimated expenses is also covered in the franchise brochure. So take a look at those two things if you want to look in more detail. So we'll break this up and I'll follow the format that the franchise disclosure document does, which is deals with the cost items in sections 5, 6, and 7, or items 5, 6, and 7 as they call it. So item 5, the first one, is the initial cost, and that's basically what we call the royalty fee, the upfront payment you pay to us. So our royalty fee for a Bar-i franchisee is going to be $20,000, and how I think about it in my mind, that $20,000 is kind of split into two parts. On the one hand, there's the purchasing the exclusive rights to your territory of 500 on-premise licenses, and the second part is the amount you pay to us for our time to train you and get you up to speed in our software and system. And so said $20,000 for initial investment, but then if you are thinking already to purchasing a second territory, and hopefully either upfront or when your business is doing well, we'll charge just 50% of the initial fee, so $10,000 if you're purchasing a second territory. Our thinking there, of course, is that you're paying for just purchasing the territory, but it's not necessary to have the additional training. So then in item 6 of the franchise disclosure document, they talk about the ongoing fees that are paid to the franchisor, to Bar-i, by our franchise partners. So the main component there is an 8% royalty as a percentage of your revenue. This is a little bit different to what we initially envisaged, which was charging a fixed price per time you use the software. But after discussions with the consultant we're working with, we decided that a percentage is fairer, because ultimately it means when you charge more for a customer, we charge a little bit more, and equally when you charge less, then we charge a little bit less. So it kind of keeps our incentives fairly aligned. Then the second element of or biggest element of ongoing fees is going to be the contribution for the National Marketing Fund, and that's going to be at 2.5% of your revenue. So the total ongoing fees, as said, will be 10.5%, which is that 8 plus 2.5 for marketing. And just a quick note to say it, we don't intend to turn that marketing contribution on initially. So the first adopters, our first few franchisees, will get away without paying that amount for some time. And then when we feel we have the marketing program dialed in and also enough franchisees to make it worthwhile collecting that amount, we'll turn that on. So you should know about it up front, but if you're an early adopter, you won't have to pay that initially. And then item 7 of the franchise disclosure document is called total estimated investment. So those first two items dealt with all the money you pay to Bar-i. And obviously there's additional costs such as purchasing your equipment, legal consultation fees, because we recommend that you have your lawyer go through your franchise agreement, etc. And then the big component at the end, the final one, is the additional funds, which is basically the working capital or the money you'll need to live on. We have that final item that's $10,000 to $20,000. Really, it's a big unknown. It depends how quick you are at getting clients, and it also depends what your living expenses are. So if you have a big mortgage or your rent is expensive, obviously that number is going to be higher. But I'd urge you really, it's difficult for us to estimate what that number is going to be, but I'd urge you really to think long and hard about that. Maybe you're in a position where you have a spouse who could support you for a couple of months. That would obviously be fortunate and make that money be less, but definitely want you to carefully consider that amount. Where that gets us to is, according to what we've declared in the franchise disclosure document, we are estimating the total cash needed to be $38,000 to $53,000. And again, that's pretty low, but I do urge you to look at those and really assess whether those you think those are fair estimates, because your situation, of course, is going to be different, and it's really on you to think about if you think those are fair reflections. We've done as best as we can, but ultimately you should evaluate those with your own thoughts. So that's costs. Next up, we're going to talk about some of the experiences and qualifications we'd love to see in our franchise partners.